Howdy, my dudes. Got another build overview here for you guys, and this one's actually pretty special. I'm happy to be able to look at it for you. This one here is by a nice fellow called Sentience, and it's not your usual Invoker Monk. This one here is a cast on Minion Death. This is a build that's usually done with easy Pablo with Invoker or sorry with Stormweaver or with like the uh, minion class there, the Infernalist. This one here is pretty interesting, and I really like the concept. I don't know if you had another build to go through to compare this against, or if this is entirely your own creation, but it's pretty nice. I like it with the Invoker too, because we got all this extra elemental damage which goes with it. This isn't based on hits, it's just elemental damage. Added onto it, you got your bound avatar that again also just adds more elemental damage. It has nothing to do with hits, and the same thing with Under My Enemies. Has nothing to do with it needing to be like strike hits or anything like that, or I should say attacks. So this all works with the spells. I think it's really, really intelligent and really smart. Now, how the concept of this build works is you cast out Fireball, and then when it breaks apart because that's how Fireball works, it also summons his Raging Spirits. He's got a little snippet on it down here for kind of explaining the basics of it, but I actually had to do some research on this, and it's really interesting. I think it's a fantastic idea for a monk, even if it's not very monkly. And so, first of all, the fireball splits apart. He's got with ricochet, so it chains more. Acceleration, so the projectiles go faster, so that way it splits apart into raging spirits. Unleash, so it casts multiple times, and scatter shots for more projectiles, which means more raging spirits. Really good. I see you got barrier invocation with arc here. I'm not too sure how well that's needed because well, I don't know if arc is 100% required for you, but also barrier invocation is the main reason why I don't quite like it. You have fireball, so you should be igniting all the time. You've already got the ignites from the amulet here and your minions. You're also going to be casting out a bunch of comets, so that should be freezing. Why not just use elemental invocation? It should charge up all the time. You won't need to get hit for it. Your elemental focus, probably a pretty big damage boost if you don't need it for this. Max capacitor, so it charges faster, or sorry, charges higher. And elemental discharge, consuming freezes, ignites. Yeah, okay, so this is how you're just trying to nuke enemies. This is like your one button nuke. I'm not too sure if it's worth it if it's consuming the shocks, but elemental discharge is a pretty interesting spell that I'm not quite as familiar with as I'd like to be to comment on this, but I think it would work pretty well. I'm just not too sold on your barrier invocation with arc. Potentially this would fit better because you're only using 5 links, so 4 supports on with your cast on Minion Death. Potentially putting this onto a 6 slot for these guys would help you out quite a bit instead. Then you could drop Barrier Invocation or use Elemental Invocation, potentially save a slot. Because I see on here you don't have Archmage, and I feel like Archmage would be the very natural add on to this because it's just extra damage. It's a lot of spirit, but as you can see in here, he says he has 314 spirit, which increases your spell damage. So I feel like if you have increased spell damage, you'd want to add that extra base damage from Archmage. It would do quite a bit for you. But on your cast on Minion Death, your first one, you have Comet, which is obviously important, which is why you put Inspiration there. He's going to be spamming many Comets a second. It's going to be extremely, extremely aesthetically pleasing, especially with the spell echo and concentrated effect to massively boost the damage. Yeah, I feel like if you're wanting to do it that way, your Elemental Discharge might be more interesting on it, but I definitely wouldn't put Elemental Focus on there, but some sort of other way to boost your Elemental damage would be wonderful. I'm not quite sold on the barrier invocation, but if it's working for you, then great. Your second cast on Minion Death is Spark, which is going to be casting like crazy, obviously. Shock Siphon, so you're using it as kind of a defensive ability. Considered castings more damage with spell hits. Yeah, that's fantastic. The less cast speed, all it does is means it's going to have slightly more energy to build up because the energy you gain to cast is based on the cast time of your skill, so that will mess it up a little bit. And you got Rising Tempest here. Rising Tempest probably could be replaced with something a little bit better because one, the cost multiplier, two, it's 12% more elemental damage for each skill used recently of a different elemental type. The problem is it needs to be used recently, so it doesn't work with trigger skills. So all these casts on it wouldn't work. So you'd only be getting the 12% per fireball, potentially up to 24% if you use Mana Tempest or Lightning Warp recently. But I'm not too sure how often you're using Lightning Warp in this build. It could work. I haven't really seen anyone use it as a active ability yet. It's usually like it auto casts and just goes boop 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 as you're shocking things as a kind of a uncontrollable nuke skill, but potentially it works. It's just you're going to have to cast two things manually quite often. It's going to be a little bit difficult. Whereas if you had elemental invocation instead of barrier invocation, you'd be getting the most out of this every time. Cast on Minion Death. Again with Frostwall, I love that. You got Glaciation in there for more freeze build-up, Icicles so they have more life, and Font of Mana. So yeah, it's going to be casting crazy amounts of Ice Walls, and the Ice Walls are also going to help generate mana for you, and then the Comets are going to instantly pop them. I'm pretty sure Font of Mana only works on one wall at a time, so if you had 8 walls around you, you're still only getting 40% increased mana regen, but based on the speed that you're going to be destroying them, it's going to be worth it. I think this will help you out quite a bit because I have a strong suspicion this build is extremely mana hungry. And now Raging Spirit's very important to get super low level. I don't know the entire reason for it, but I do remember it's extremely important. Oh wait, yes I do, because that way it reduces the life of the minion that you have. You want it level 4, probably level 5 works. The reason for it is because it works with your Fire Flower Amulet. It means the minion immediately dies and triggers your cast on Minion Death. You got Infernal Legion, which is perfect for it. It's honestly, couldn't pick a better skill. You're trying to nuke those minions as fast as possible. That's really the only thing that matters. So you're doing everything you can to make sure the minion, when it pops, it does as much damage as possible. This is a great setup. I like that a lot. Grim Feast with Clarity. You're gonna need that mana. Mana Tempest, yeah, it makes sense. It's probably going to be another big mana sink, but when you're doing bossing for sure, I feel like this is going to be amazing. Uh, Skills empowered by supported skills deal 30% more damage. What are you using to empower Mana Tempest, though? Of course, Arcane Surge makes a lot of sense, but I'm not seeing. Skills empowered by supported skills have Culling Strike, yes, and skills empowered. Oh, empowered by supported skills. Yep. Okay, I see what you mean. So this here, is it empowering? That is empowering. Okay, yeah. Okay, never mind. This is pretty great. I didn't read that little tag there. No, you got the solid. You got that solid here. And then you got your Lightning Warp with Soul Drain. Uh, Makes sense because this culls and you got Culling Strike from Murder, so 10 if you didn't already have it. But now you're giving everything Lightning Exposure, which is great. If you're probably going to be needing cold. Well, I don't know if cold exposure applies before or after your critical hits. Ignore non-negative elemental resistances. Based on the way it's written, I feel like exposure works before and then you just reduce it to 0, but it's very possible I'm wrong on that. But I really like most of your skills. The only one I'm not really sold on is Barrier Invocation. I feel like it should be Elemental Invocation to get the most out of Rising Tempest, because this just isn't. It feels like it's not going to be doing that much for you. And it's possible you could just completely replace this with Archmage for more overall damage for everything, giving you lightning, fire, and cold at all times, because obviously Fireball is going to be igniting, and Raging Spirit is going to be igniting, your Comets are going to be freezing, and then you could be getting shock from literally everything else. Uh, I mean, you have it with Spark, but it's another avenue that you could possibly go through. I see that you got your 314 spirit, and this doesn't look like 314 spirit costs, so I feel like you have the room for it. And now to go over your equipment here. You got allies in your presence have increased elemental. The increased spirit is the big thing in here. Intelligence, max spam, increased spirit would be the big things. Potentially like plus a spell level so that you can increase your comet, but that might also increase your mana cost to a point that is very hard to maintain. I'm sure this level 17 malice is doing work for you too because critical weakness is incredibly nice. Like absolutely incredibly nice. I love this for you. Uh, it will help you getting off your Sundermine enemies more, and it'll just scale with everything. Uh, your helmet here looks like it's mostly great. Again, I mean, the increased critical hit chance on your helmet is probably absolutely essential, but I'd say try to look for something with a little bit of intelligence on it to boost that mana again. I really think you should try to get some uh, Archmage on here because it would be the most natural add-on to make this even better. Like this looks fantastic as is. I just feel like that's the one natural thing. Either replacing Lightning Warp or Barrier Invocation. And if you did that, then potentially, if you replace both, well, even if you just replace Barrier Invocation with Elemental Invocation, the Lightning Warp with Archmage, then that would be one thing for sure. But I'm sure you don't want to lose the mobility of Lightning Warp. So potentially, maybe instead having something a little bit more controllable like Blink would be more up your alley. I'm just I'm not 100% if this is doing as much for you as it could be. But yeah, now Fire Flower, this one here is absolutely irreplaceable because it's what kills the Raging Spirits. I wasn't too sure exactly what it did until I actually had to look into the build, but no, this is irreplaceable. But Snake Pit here, I'm not too sure, is Snake Pit actually required? Like, yeah, I see you got the extra chain, but the only thing really chaining is your Fireball, and you're probably already getting maximum Raging Spirits as it is. If this is be able to be replaced, you'd probably have a lot of room with a ring that gives you more defensive stats and like obviously intelligence mana to scale that way. Uh, but as it stands, though, this increased spell damage and cast speed is going to be really hard to replace. So if you were to get another ring, it would be obviously cast speed, intelligence, mana, and then resistances, whatever you need. Probably in the case of you having this no stat on this ring with just chaos res, I'm guessing you need chaos res. Do you have chaos inoculation? You are not chaos inoculated. Okay, so you have really low life to no life on basically all your gear, and you're not chaos inoculated, so that might be an issue. Uh, does this ignite? No, you just take 100 fire damage, so that would go towards your energy shield. So if you are going, yes, it looks like if you went that way, you could probably switch to Mind over Matter, which would give you a lot more defensives. This 5 to all elemental resistances is probably really nice for you if you are struggling to get the max res, probably because of that one ring. And so going mind over matter might give you a ton of survivability if you're able to afford it, because this is just damage taken from mana before life. So uh, doing something like Eldritch Battery on top of that would give you more mana to give to that, but then you'd lose your entire energy shield, which would mean your mana would get hit first. So that's entirely up to you if you're willing to lose that. But I feel like there are ways to make this a little bit better. Your gearing does look really good. It's just I feel if you do make that swap to Archmage, you would be better off getting obviously mana and int on all your pieces. But as it stands right now for what you have, this is pretty good. These boots here, obviously, they can be upgraded quite a bit. It's got the 50 maximum energy shield, then a really low 33 maximum mana, and also that 106 to Sun Threshold probably is doing quite a bit for you, because I hear it's kind of sort of bugged having a little bit of flat threshold on your gear. It does way more than having like percent threshold from your tree. It's strange. It's very strange. It shouldn't work that way, but if it feels nice, then great, keep using it. But I feel like getting maybe slightly better resistances, bigger mana roll, or flat energy shield, percent energy shield, and then int at the bottom as well would do wonders for you. This one here wouldn't change anything about this belt really, except for maybe getting another resistance, like getting fire res on there, or I don't even know if it can get chaos res on a belt, but that's an option, and flat intelligence instead of 20 stun threshold. That's the only thing really doing nothing for you. But like obviously prefixes don't do too much, but you not being CI means that 84 to life is helpful. And your gloves here, really nice resistances, but nothing else is really doing this for you. This is like 2.5 mods, 3 mods I guess, because it's actually a nice energy shield flat roll. You should probably look to replace these first. This one isn't doing too much for you. Obviously, I can't really comment on the rings because I don't know what this ring is even doing. It's just saying it's a flat amethyst ring. But yeah, this one here could be swapped out for something with similar resistances, but you know, well, actually no, that 39 mana per enemy killed is probably absolutely essential for you, with how high the mana costs are going to be for this build. So that one's going to be hard to replace for sure. Uh, it's just that 75 max life and 5 to 10 physical damage to attacks is probably hurting you more than it's really doing anything. But overall, you seem to have a really good idea for all your gear here. I know that this shield is going to be absolutely essential because, you know, increased spell damage per 10 spirit, absolutely essential to your build, and it gives you a little survivability. So, and you've even got a nice corrupt on it. So, heck yeah, that looks pretty good. Martial weapon gain 10 mana per enemy killed, or is it the mana regen? Okay, if you're relying on mana regenerate that bad, then it's probably hurting you quite a bit. According to this, you don't have a socket on your scepter yet, so I mean that's one thing to upgrade for sure. You don't even have the upgraded anything that you can for this fire flower, but the only thing you really could do is slap mana onto it, which would give you a little bit better regen rate, which would mean maybe you could take it off of. I thought I saw it somewhere on here. Probably this jewel, honestly, this 15% mana regen rate. Drop that for something that might help you out a little bit more, like resistances. Because, like, here, you got 12% lightning res. If you were to get a 20% uh, energy shield increase on this, it would probably, and then put the lightning res onto your shield, it might help you out more after you pump up the mana regen from this ring. Now, your jewels here, it's probably going to be, yeah, 2% mana on kill, chance to ignite, and triggered cells deal more damage. You're probably going to have a pretty, yeah, increased cold damage and crit chance, recouped as life. I really don't think you will want to be staying as life for this. I think CI will help you out immensely. Oh, somebody just followed. That's funny. And yeah, these man-on kills and trigger spell damage are going to be great. The area of effect is going to be great for you. Shock duration doesn't really matter. The penetrate cold resistance won't matter. Uh, I really don't think damage taken recouped as life will do anything for you. The cold damage crit are nice. Like the penetrates really won't do anything because you're already ignoring resistances. And you're probably igniting without this chance to ignite. So I feel like these have a lot of room to improve. This one here is about as close to perfect as you're going to get. The cold damage for your comets, the energy shield, the crit chance, the mana regenerate. I love this one. This one's amazing. If you could look to, I mean, obviously you have to corrupt some jewels. This one here is going to be pretty difficult to convince yourself to corrupt because it's honestly perfect. This is your best one by a massive amount. But if you could get something like a resistance on it, or like intelligence, or any number of other things that you could potentially help with your build, this would uh, it would be like adding an extra jewel or two over the course of all of them. And this one here, your minions don't care if they have chaos res, but the other three mods are really good. So like these ones are really great, uh, especially the maximum energy shield. I think this one here is not doing too much. The 1% mana on kill is nice, but I mean you could have two. You could the area of effect is nice and the triggered is nice, but like the shock duration isn't really doing anything. These are all kind of low rolls except for the damage, and I'm sure you have more than enough damage to deal with anything. This one here, the crit chance, wonderful, but after that, crit chance and cold damage, wonderful, but after that, what are the other two mods doing? And then same thing with this one here, the mana on kill, absolutely essential, and the trigger damage, lovely. But you could have energy shield, you could have crit chance, you could have a corrupted resistance, a whole lot of things that would help you out greatly. But I'm not too sure what your budget is, but I think this is probably a pretty special build, something that you just walk in and people go, whoa, what the hell is that? Now with your passive tree here, really good. I was hoping I didn't see that you went for the mana regen and instead you got the tankiness. This is great. Uh, I don't know if you really need Essence of the Mountain, but if you do, I mean, it's extra cold damage, so you can't really complain about that. Extra mana on kill, absolutely essential here. I was kind of worried if you didn't have this. And then you came down for the extra lightning damage and extra crit chance here. I feel like you might. No, no, I kind of like this, except for I just don't think you quite need these nodes as much. You may be better off coming like this, except you don't need the attack and cast speed. Never mind. Well, cast speed is probably nice, but you could come around like this and then come for the extra crit chance. Then you could drop these two essence of the mountain and essence of the storm. If you're willing to save those couple points, it would. These surprisingly don't give as much damage as they they would look on paper. There are better nodes out there, and so I feel like you might enjoy a little bit more utility. But having lightning damage on everything might help the Comet shock, so that could be wrong. I'm just saying that swapping these out and putting them around here for more energy shield and then cast speed, then coming up here for more crit chance might be a little bit better for you. Because you're obviously going crit damage, crit chance pretty much everywhere. I like this node a lot for you because you don't have the stupid insane scaling from like the pillar that's like 1,000% you get. You do have like 300 and something percent, so this extra 90% from these three nodes plus the extra 30, so 120% total is going to do wonders for you. You're obviously igniting everything from the floating summon raging spirits. You're going to be shocking all the time from the lightning damage you're getting from Mana Tempest. And again, I feel like you really should put in Archmage, which would help you out greatly. And then the freezing or chilling, yeah, obviously you're spamming Comets like crazy. You got it all. Like, this is beautiful. I feel like you should definitely come out here for the 10 dex crit chance. You probably don't need 10 dex, but this 30% crit chance is going to be lovely. Absolutely lovely. I would even drop these guys here because, yeah, it's 50%, 70% damage if you dealt a critical hit recently, but this one here scales a little bit less than just making sure you get the crits. This here is 30% crit chance for 2 points, where this here is only 12. So I would definitely suggest putting these 2 points in, potentially removing these for the time being, depending on your level and depending on what you need. Because obviously, I know you're going to want as much reduced cast speed as possible, and you're not really in a position where you're going to take deep trance because that's attack speed, so it's useless for you. Now, what does this here give? Meta damage, yeah, this here. This here is essential for your build. It's perfect. Increased spell damage. You probably don't need increased energy. You're probably casting on every single minion death. You're to a point where you're not gonna have to worry about anything. And right here, mm, I like the increased damage with hits against frozen enemies, but you're already ignoring elemental resistances on crit. So I feel like these are kind of three more wasted stats because if you're going to be taking the ignore elemental resistances on crit, just scale the crit higher. And so you would probably want to come out here for Colorful Assassin instead. I know it's reduced critical damage bonus, but that crit chance is insanely beneficial for Sunder My enemies. I feel like this here would make your crits so much more consistent that you just don't even need to worry about this at all. Coming up here, more triggered and more recover mana when you invoke a spell. I'm not too sure what invoking a spell is. I gotta check that out. Triggered by invocation spells. Okay, so again, that's where I'd say elemental invocation would be better off instead of barrier invocation. I really think that would help you out quite a bit. And then up here, yeah, makes sense. Critical hit chance for spells, reduce critical hit chance against you. Not bad, not bad at all. I like this bit of nodes as well. It's just spells. I mean, you're also just doing spells. You got a whole bunch of extra fire damage on there. This one here I think is also not really needed because it's not your summoning raging spirits that are doing fire damage. Doing all the damage. It's your comets. So all of this for 8% damage is extra fire damage. If you need the 20% fire resistance, yeah, you don't have a controlled metamorphosis. I feel like you should get a controlled metamorphosis for this. I believe a large or a very large will hit volcanic skin. And so that would save you all these points going up to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Instead of 6, you'd be spending 1. And for the cost of those 6 points, you could come over here and get your mind over matter. And where are you? 1, 2. No, that's conduit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you'd be able to get Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter if you were able to make that swap. With that said, though, I don't know if that's something you're willing to do, but I think it would help you out quite a bit. And that's just points from this one area alone. Yeah, you lose 8% of damage as extra fire, but you gain so much more for defensives. Like a ridiculous amount more for defensives, and I really think that will be worth it for you. Now, yeah, you're even getting reduced maximum life from this heavy buffer. This is a great node, I like it a lot. But if you're already getting this, why not BCI? Keep stacking stuff like this, stack it like crazy. 30% damage against burning, and yeah, you got your increased elemental damage. I like most of this. I really, really like what you're going, where you're going with this. You have great ideas. I'm actually a big fan of this build. This is fantastic, really creative, really beautiful. Just the only things I would suggest for sure is to drop these nodes up here because it's a lot of increased fire damage when you're not banking on fire damage. Uh, Drop these extra as cold and lightning and come up here for a little bit more defensives and come for the crit chance. And then drop these nodes here, these three, for the increased damage if you dealt the crit hit recently to come and take this up here for True Strike. And then drop these three to get Careful Assassin. I'm not too sure how many extra points you're at right now. You may even want to drop this 15% max energy shield if you need a few more points. But then also, yeah, you got all of that gone. Then you're going to get this big damage bonus. Yeah, equipped amulet, apply to your minions instead. That one's essential. Come over here for Eldritch Battery, and then you can come and potentially find something like this one. Gain 25% of cold damage, just extra fire damage against frozen enemies, and you're already going to be smacking everything with your comets. I think with the suggestions I had, you'd be able to get climate change, and this is much more helpful for you because like you're probably not going to worry about the freeze buildup, but you'll take this 8% cold, 8% fire, which is going to do more for you than this 12% fire by a massive margin, and then give you a 25% damage uh, multiplier on top of it all, which is much better than this 8% and these two 5%. Yeah, I really think that's the way to go with this. I love your build. Honestly, this looks super fun. This looks way more fun than I was expecting to see, and I think you did a really great job. Uh, Another thing that might help is potentially right here, breaking point. It's only 2 more points, 30% magnitude of your non-damaging ailments, getting 6% more shock effect because your base is 20 and 30% magnitude would bring it up to 26. That's a 6% more multiplier onto your comet. That also might be a thing. I'm not too sure all of what you can afford on there, but yeah, if you have extra points, I don't know how many more points you have to go, but you know, potentially coming up here for the attack and cast speed with elemental skills, and then getting this big increased elemental damage with critical elemental skills that you crit recently, and then more crit chance. More crit chance is going to do wonders for you. I think that's where you need to go. I think that's the best way to do this. Everything else, I think you did really well. Yeah, I think you did absolutely fantastic. This looks kind of beautiful. I I kind of want to try this out myself, but I do not have the skills for it. I'd love to see it in action, and yeah, I really do hope that helped you out. This here is a very interesting build, but yeah, I'd suggest swapping Barrier Invocation and maybe Lightning Warp to get Elemental Invocation and Archmage. Make the gear changes that I suggested, a little bit of everything everywhere to try and transition to an Archmage so that you can get the survivability. Then when you make the swaps on the change on the tree, you'll get the big manas and energy shields towards your mana pool to make you very defensive and strong. You may not even need Eldritch Battery, but that is a possible option. But yeah, hope that helped you out. You have a great day, and thanks again for submitting the build.